Hi, my name is Scott Jordan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SCOTTeVEST and technology-enabled clothing. And I wanted to say a few words about my appearance on Shark Tank this past Friday, March 2nd. And I thought this would be a good forum to do so. On Friday, March 2nd, I appeared on ABC's reality show, Shark Tank. The premise of the show is as follows. An entrepreneur enters the tank with an idea and an offer. He or she pitches the product or business, and the sharks decide whether or not they want to invest. The two parties either reach an agreement or the entrepreneurs leave with nothing but some good exposure and a memorable experience. Since the show aired on Friday, I have received overwhelming feedback from all over the board. The criticisms of those who took issue with my appearance fall in a few distinct categories. There are those who feel that I used the platform merely for PR purposes, that I was never interested in a deal, but rather that I took advantage of the exposure. I am also receiving criticism in regard to my demeanor, that I was disrespectful, aggressive, and less than cordial in my interactions with the sharks, although usually expressed in more colorful terms than that. My response is as follows. I entered the tank in the hopes of gaining a strategic business partner who would help me establish my licensing company, TEC, Technology Enabled Clothing, in a way that I have yet been unable to do on my own. The exposure inherent in an appearance on national TV is something no entrepreneur would ignore. It was only after it became apparent that none of the sharks were interested in making a deal for tech that I decided to focus on the PR value of the experience. In other words, the performance. I could not share the results of the filming with anyone. However, I knew that although I did not get a deal with one of the sharks, there would be an opportunity to expose the world and tech, and the world to tech and to SCOTTeVEST, and I was not about to let that opportunity slip by. My friends and family who know me well know that I am completely transparent. I cannot lie. I cannot act. I pitched a product I believed in and reacted honestly in the heated debate that ensued. That said, I feel that the segment the public saw on Friday needs some context. It needs to be explained. There's a lot to be said about how the 60 minutes that I was in the tank was edited down to around 20. ABC, in the end, is trying to make good TV, and no one can blame them for doing that job well. Granted, that is not the whole story. And to blame editing entirely would be a cop-out, and that's not my style. I really did call Robert's initial offer insane, and I did tell Robert and Kevin that they were out. I argued fiercely with Mark Cuban about intellectual property rights. He later indicated in a podcast that he made it his mission to make me cry. About standing by my patent and the essential Americanness of the patent system. After all, it is a right that was included in the Constitution. But let's put this into perspective. How many times have you seen entrepreneurs, people who are really starting out, who have a great idea and need guidance and money, flounder in the tank, get taken advantage of? The difference between my segment and most is that I am a businessman and that I am willing and able to engage the sharks in a serious business interaction. I think that surprised them. I most definitely wanted to strike a deal with one or more of them to get tech off the ground as a true licensing company with much more to offer than a single patent for wire management system. I was not about to turn wobbly-kneed and forget why I was there and sell away part of the company that my wife and I have put our hearts and souls in for over 10 years. Every time I watch the episode, which is not as many times as some people would like to believe, I see something. I remember what happened to induce a reaction, or I think about what one of the sharks said to set me off. I see the moments in which I appear arrogant, and knowing myself, I really was cornered. I see myself as what I really was, and that is cornered. I mean, imagine yourself with 5, venture capitalists coming at you. I had to defend my patent in every way I could, and my business. A good friend of mine wrote me after he watched the show, quote, "You come across as a guy who just loves his company and his product," end quote. I am a guy who loves his company and his product. And in those moments, I was a guy who saw that my company that I've worked so hard for threatened. Those sharks are persuasive personalities, and they are powerful people. From a businessman's perspective, these are people who we look up to. The pressures add up, and the intimidation factor, the thrill of being in the company of the sharks. But as the sharks and the rest of America learned, I would not be bullied into taking a bad deal. So, to recap, I entered the tank with a deal that I thought was reasonable. The sharks wanted something else. What ensued was an aggressive negotiation among equals, and we ended up not making a deal. It's that simple. No one on the panel is involved with the future of TEC or SCOTTeVEST, but I am confident that the future of both are bright. I want to thank my friends and followers for their support via Twitter, Facebook, and blogging. SCOTTeVEST was built on transparency and through direct relationships with customers. I want to emphasize that this is not just TV at this point. The issues that arose during the filming about protecting the intellectual property, about the value of the licensing subsidiary, and about what it means to negotiate in a business are very serious to me. Expect these debates to continue. My name is Scott Jordan. I am the co-founder and CEO of SCOTTeVEST and Technology-Enabled Clothing. And I hope that my experience in the Shark Tank can be helpful to others. What I plan to do next, separately, is to review the entire show and give my commentary, give some context as to what happened. I think you will be truly surprised about some of the things that I will reveal. I thank you for your support. I started recording. Hi, my name is Scott Jordan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SCOTTeVEST and Technology-Enabled Clothing. And what I am doing is I'm going to give a running commentary while watching the episode of Shark Tank from last Friday night, March 2nd, of what was happening, what I was thinking, what I think was edited out that would add a little more context and make it clearer what happened in the tank. So let me start by saying this is at its core TV. This is a reality show, and let's not ever lose sight of that. This is intended to be educational as well, and I expect it to go into the tank and get a deal and get investors for my company. But I could not forget that this was at its core a TV show. And as I go through this, you'll understand there were hundreds of people on the set. At no point could you forget that you were taping a TV show. As a result, there was a lot of preparation for this. I prepared. I did through the application process. I rehearsed. I did a lot of things to prepare for this. But I will say this: if you're looking to raise money, your odds are not great going into the Shark Tank in doing so. This is not the best forum to go just looking for a deal. You have to go there looking to raise money and be credible. And I believe that I was, and I'll explain the restraints I was under. But you have to understand that currently over 6 million people are watching you. This is exposure for you and your company. And you have to recognize that. And why is it not a good idea to raise money here? Let me tell you the odds. 60,000 people applied to be on the show. 60 people are selected. Of those 60, 80% or so actually go to air. I'm not sure the exact figures, but not all the people that air are actually, that tape actually air. Of those that air, I've read that about half of those do deals on the show. Of those deals that take place, only half of those are actually done by the sharks, from what I've understood. These are all publicly available information. So I would caution other entrepreneurs who think going on Shark Tank is the best way to raise capital that it is not. But it is a lot of fun. It was a fabulous experience. And as you'll see, there's a lot going on behind the cameras than what you see in the edited version. Just to give you some context, this was filmed around the first week of September last summer, at the end of last summer in the year 2011, and it took probably 2.5, 3 months of preparation, which was extensive preparation. As you can tell, I was very prepared for all the questions that were thrown at me. and my pitch as well. So it was intense. It was intense. So and I'll have you know that like 3 days prior to going on Shark Tank and filming, that I broke my elbow. So if I'm walking a little stiff, I was told to wear a sling all the time. That is why. So without further delay, let me just get started, and I'm going to be pausing it, and we're going to do this in 15-minute segments. The actual show itself was about 20 minutes, which is close to 3 times as long as the average done for other entrepreneurs. So apparently ABC seemed to like my appearance. So here we go.
Next into the tank is Scott Jordan, who hopes to entice the sharks with the patent for his clothing technology.
A couple things I want to stop right here. When I walked in, and I'm standing right there. First thing, you don't hear a guy announcing, first into the tank is Scott Jordan. The sharks know nothing about you until you walk in other than your name. They don't know the business, so as far as they were concerned, I was about to do a dance about a cat drawing company or something. So they had no idea whatsoever what was about to transpire at this moment. It was not easy for me to memorize this. This was the hardest thing. After this, a lot of people accused me of acting, and that was all me. That's who people who know me. That's how I am. I speak my mind. I'm transparent. I was actually kind of restrained.
Especially when you travel as often as I do. So, what have I told you? Everything on this desk.
I was really disappointed because there was a point that I wanted to make sure I had an opportunity to take all that stuff out and show everyone that it really was. And Robert asked to see it and tried it on. And it was awesome because he said, "This is great." He actually tried it on and loved the product and started pulling it out. Couldn't believe all the stuff was on there. So I really didn't get a chance to talk about my product other than the 2 minutes here. And this was actually edited down as well. There was a portion that was included that was... So you can also tell that they were presenting my business as just a patent. It was technology-enabled clothing is a separate business. It's a licensing and branding business. It's not just a patent. It is all the things that I'm talking about. It happens to include a patent, but the pocketing system as well.
I know that this can become the next huge ingredient brand.
So you can see how stiff I am on my elbow. I couldn't extend it.
And this is a billion-dollar opportunity. Right. I've told you about my pockets. Now it's time for you to reach deep into yours.
So I want to say something. At this moment, I was so relieved. I was so convinced that I was going to forget something there. That was all so rehearsed. So you have no idea. You're waiting in the green room, preparing. I was repeating this over and over, videoing myself and seeing it. And just like the one take right before, I forgot something. There were certain lines I would always trip up on. So at this point, at this moment, I was so excited, and what ensued.
2 days ago, I was flipping through the back of Men's Journal magazine, and there was a similar product, and I thought, wow, what a great idea. Is that you?
So I could not have been more thrilled to get that question. What you probably know by now is that I couldn't mention the name SCOTTeVEST. I also couldn't negotiate for SCOTTeVEST. I could respond if asked about the company, but because of the way that the whole performance is structured, I could not talk about SCOTTeVEST. I was there solely to pitch technology-enabled clothing.
Have you protected it? Yes. And did you win? Yes.
So why is that bad?
I've settled with 11 of the largest companies, including VF Corporation, North Face, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Under Armour, Spider.
You're getting an ongoing royalty?
Subject to confidentiality agreements.
Wait a second. Is it getting a royalty stream from the settlers? You don't have to tell me how much.
Yes.
Okay, listen.
And did that body
Stop right now. Stop right now. You need me very badly. I know how to suit you.
So at this point, I was excited because I knew that Kevin understood this. I think Kevin might be a lawyer in a past life as well, and to understand the value of patents and tested is extreme. But I want to be clear about this, and it's going to come up again. They were treating me and the fact that I would sue to enforce my patent. Why get a patent if you're not going to enforce it? It is worthless if you don't. And the American economy is based upon, it's so much so it's in the Constitution, getting patents, protecting ingenuity. And the patents don't have to be for something that's complicated. A sticky note or a post-it note, that's patented. A rivet in jeans for Levi's, that's patented. TiVo had a patent on the ability to record and watch another program. Something that someone hasn't thought of, that the patent office deems in their definition is unique, is patentable. In my case, no one had thought of coming up with a wiring system in clothing before. It doesn't matter that it ultimately was easy to implement. It matters that no one had thought of it before. That's all. So Mark's understanding of the patent law is not correct. We'll talk more about that in a second. And I want to mention something that he said about Apple as it relates to that.
This is going to be wonderful. I want it all, though. Why are you just giving me a taste when I want to eat the whole pie?
I don't need you for the other company.
Yes, you do.
Now, I knew I was in trouble here. Once they started, I had redirected them, made it very clear I was talking solely about technology-enabled clothing. I was prepared for this moment, and I knew that I had to cut it off, because if I continued in a discussion about SCOTTeVEST and they recognized the value of SCOTTeVEST and insisted on getting it, I could not talk about it. Under the agreement I have, that I can't get into all the details, but I can tell you this because it's disclosed at the end in the disclaimer, that the producers get an equity interest in the company that you are presenting. So for me to step up there on that stage, regardless of whether or not you get a deal, I had to give a percentage interest in technology-enabled clothing. Now, I was willing to do that for technology-enabled clothing because the value of that company is much less than SCOTTeVEST. To stand on the stage and if I were to mention SCOTTeVEST or negotiate for SCOTTeVEST or offer SCOTTeVEST, and I think this is going to help people understand why I behaved the way I did, why I was always redirecting, and why I didn't talk about it. I believe the sharks understand this, but they might have forgotten it, or didn't put two and two together as to why I would not negotiate that. Now, I must admit, when I first applied to be on Shark Tank, I applied with SCOTTeVEST because that is the main company. That's what I wanted the most exposure for. And that I would have liked an investment, although I honestly don't need an investment in SCOTTeVEST. That's not the case with technology-enabled clothing. Technology-enabled clothing is costing me a lot of money now that I'm not currently seeing revenues that exceed the expenses. And I was seriously and remain seriously, if you're interested, this is not an offer for investment for obvious reasons, securities reasons, but I remain serious in getting investors for technology-enabled clothing, in addition to other licensees that we're working on. So I think if you understand that at this moment on, the tenor is changed, and my attitude, I had to protect and redirect the conversation and protect tech at all cases, and understanding that my audience now is not just the 5 sharks in front of me, but it is over 6 million people, which include my customers, my friends, my family, as well as potential licensees and other companies that are currently infringing. So it's very important for me to understand who I'm talking to now. Let me just keep going.
The problem is there's leakage in the deal. I don't get any of the good stuff, just the risky stuff.
No, it's not risky.
It's not.
See, and it isn't risky. I mean, you ask anyone for a company that has a patent that's tested, where is the risk? If the patent wasn't tested, they often invest in companies that just have a patent pending. Do you know how many patents go through the application process and get rejected? This one not only got approved, but it got approved 3 times. Once initially, secondarily on a reissuance, and then third on a reexamination. And that's after the patent laws have changed. So the patent is rock solid.
What exactly is the property that you own that you can defend and have defended?
a garment with no wires in it, but the capacity to wire things in it.
Is it a design patent?
Yeah, design and utility.
It's been issued.
Not only issued, not only tested in litigation, but recently re-examined and passed re-examination.
So basically, the patent is attributable to the wires.
That's right.
Only the wires.
So that, for example, this pocket here has a hole in it that leads up through here.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. That's just common sense.
I lost Mark. I knew it. Right here, I lost Mark. My whole point this forward was redirect away from Mark. The more Mark was involved at this point, because he's very loud, he's opinionated. When Mark says something, the whole room changes. That's the way it is. I'm a fan of the show, and he can change the whole conversation. So at this moment, I know I'm in trouble. And I have to, as best I can, as forcefully as I can, deal with objections with as much respect as I could at this point.
Wires out. That's what's killing this country, that we get dumbass patents that people then turn around and sue. When
Yes, I love this
It's
country.
ridiculous.
We're being American.
Think about
So I took offense to a businessman who I will bet his business has many patents, all his businesses, that he will defend rigorously. For him to tell me that my patent is a dumbass patent, that's not the way you negotiate respectfully. So up until this very moment, I was completely respectful, and I think even thereafter. But at this point, someone has attacked me and attacked my business that I've built up. So everything in this point, there's a little shift, and you can see it in my demeanor. But I think under the circumstances, imagine how you would react if someone said that your business was related to a dumbass thing. And now I have to, again, keep in mind, I am not only talking to them, but I am talking to all of America, potential licensees, and I have to make clear that I'm willing to defend this patent, and I don't think it's a dumbass patent. One other thing about Mark. He used as an example that got cut, he says, do you know one of the greatest companies in America, Apple? You know how many patents Apple had when they first started out until just recently? And in my mind, I'm smiling, and maybe I actually was, because I knew I was going to call Woz. And I knew that his example was really misplaced. And he said, I said, I don't know. And he said, only one patent. And I replied back, that's all I have. And on one patent, Apple was able to build a multi-billion-dollar company, keeping the competitors away. If Apple did not have that patent, I imagine they would not be the company they are today. And for Mark to use an example, Apple with Steve Wozniak on our board of advisors, to me, it was just so perfect. It got cut.
As a businessman, exactly what you're saying, especially.
This is my biggest mistake when I said I was a lawyer. At this next statement,
As an ex-lawyer who hated dealing with lawyers so much, I stopped practicing law.
Running a wire?
at this point, when people know you're a lawyer, everything changes. They treat you differently. They think you're litigating. The whole impression of you is different. And you can see a number of the comments here reflect that.
Through a piece of clothing?
I'm telling you, Mark. I mean,
That's a patent? Are you kidding me?
Mark, who cares?
No, that's crazy. No. You're so full of crap.
Now, more backstory. Mark Cuban was interviewed just last week on a podcast, and you can download it. Just search Mark Cuban Shark Tank crying, talking about me, where he actually said, he didn't name me by name, but it was very clear he was talking about me. He actually said that his goal was to make me cry. I mean, if you consider how absurd that is, and that how I handled this under the circumstances, if Mark Cuban wants to make a man cry on national TV, what does that say about Mark, first thing? And what does it say that I was able to withstand an attack by Mark? It went on. This wasn't all you saw. Mark, from that moment forward, was attacking me every opportunity he had. He was coming at me personally in an attempt, by his own words, to not just tear me down, but to make me cry. And the more he attacked me, the stronger I got. And he could not tolerate that, in my opinion. I would like, personally, I don't take this all personally, although in that room I think I might have. I would like to challenge Mark to a debate on patents in general and my patent specifically, on what patents have done for America. I think a lot of the confusion was there is such a thing called a patent troll. A patent troll are people who collect patents on businesses and processes that they have no intention of using and no intention of using in their own business, and they just go around and sue other people and try to stop them. That is horrible. I think that is not helping our economy, and that I agree with Mark. But that is not what I am. I am trying to protect my business and came up with a unique invention. Very different. So let's continue.
Scott, the cases you have defended have been when, arguably say, let's say one of my designers, and I have 30 of them, decided to wire something, a hood or something else
This was an...
It goes out, we don't even know you exist and have that patent. You hit us, we say, instead of paying the attorney bills, give me 50 to go away because we don't have time for this. And that's it. And that's the reason why you got to do it.
Now, you can even look at Mark Cuban's face around this time. He was so pissed off. He just couldn't believe it. Now, when Damon was telling me about this story, it really blew me away, because why is it in clothing that when designers design something and they do something new and they copy, in fashion, they knock off other people all the time. It's just commonplace. Why is it that they don't feel an obligation to do a patent search to see whether someone else has invented it? I mean, I know for a fact that people have tried to knock off my stuff, and I defend it. So I know when I look at other clothing items and I find something unique, if I want to incorporate that feature, before doing so, I do my research. It costs about $1,000 to have your attorney do a patent search. You can go on as any entrepreneur on uspto.gov, put some search terms in, do a little research. There's every other business, when designing new products, has a requirement to make sure that no one else has a patent on that. Why that doesn't apply to Damon and the fashion industry in general is beyond me. It does apply to you. And let this be a lesson to businessmen and people when you are trying to develop a new invention and you think it's new, even though you think it's simple, your best bet is to do the research. You really should. But having said that, Kevin, I want to be in business with you. I think we can take tech to the next level, and I mean that quite seriously. So if you're watching, and I suspect you will be, let's do some business together. So.
What's a clothing company trading at these days? Let's call it 5 times.
You can't use just a stale clothing company. Our margins are twice as high because we're direct to consumer.
30 million? Who's that saying now? Because it's growing at 100%.
Now, there was a lot of discussions on valuations at this point, and there was an internet clothing company that raised a great deal of money. You can, if you're familiar with the industry, that sells direct to consumer. They make a great product. They had about sales comparable to ours, and they were valued at $30 million. Yet they had not made a nickel ever since they've been in business, and they had no intellectual property. And yet their valuation was based upon hundreds, if not thousands of times earnings, because they had no earnings. In fact, they have sold more stock than they have clothing. So for me, there was a legitimate basis for the $30 million figure. I had a comp, and I had figures to back it up, and none of that made it there. It was very heated at this point, and talking about this, that was all cut out.
It has intellectual properties where it's unique, it's online, it's building a brand, a lifestyle brand.
It's not. First of all, the intellectual property is built about running a wire through clothing.
So again, with Mark.
A wire, Velcro.
So there was a discussion at this point, if I recall, on all these other great companies and simple inventions. And that meant nothing to Mark. Keep in mind, his stated goal is to make me cry. And up until, again, I would caution you not to look at things, emphasizing on the teasers that were provided where they keep repeating, you're insane and I don't need you. I mean, for the most part, my demeanor is very, very respectful. I'm calm, I'm answering their questions even despite, their attitude. So
It does matter because wireless is what's next.
Wires will not go away with battery power and for the time being for music. People will always prefer to listen to music with wired headsets. sound quality is better. You don't have to worry about pairing issues.
I don't agree. I'll put low power Bluetooth into the shoulder, let it distribute to all the other devices and to the headphones and kick your ass.
Now, he's telling you he's going to kick my ass. I mean, why is it that I'm being a douche, as I've been called, when this is a man who's telling me he's going to kick my ass? I mean, that is not the way professional business people have a discussion and negotiate. The fact of the matter is that every new iPhone that you buy, every new phone that you buy, every new device that you buy has Bluetooth. It comes with Bluetooth. But guess what? It also comes with a hard wire of headsets. And most people, when they're listening to music, would prefer to use headsets to listen to them, even though they can use Bluetooth headsets. We all know the difficulties of Bluetooth. How often do you have to remember to recharge the batteries? How often do they not pair? How often does it pick up the phone when you want to pick up something else? Bluetooth is a great device. I, in fact, love Bluetooth myself. But when I want to listen to my music, and when I want to have great sound quality, and when I want to know that I'm not going to have to replace a battery, what do I pick up? And I'll bet, and I would challenge people, find pictures of Mark Cuban, with headsets, wired headsets. He uses them. Everyone does still. So his idea, by the way, of incorporating Bluetooth into the shoulders is, and I'll say it's just dumb. People do not want to buy clothing and have electronics embedded into their clothing. They don't want to have to deal with washing their clothes with electronics, taking them in, out, having to recharge their batteries. That is a dumb idea. I've considered it. I know more about this topic than anyone else. I've given it a lot of thought. I've been doing this a while. I don't believe that people want Bluetooth embedded into their shoulder. Why would you? You could take that Bluetooth distributor, and it can be small. It is small. It exists today, and you can put it into a pocket. You don't need it embedded into the shoulder. It adds no value to take it and actually embed it into clothing. I just don't believe it does today. I don't believe it does tomorrow. I think it doesn't make sense. Now, there are those out there, and I would invite you, if anyone has any questions about what you're seeing now, email me, scott@scottevest.com. Post them on Twitter, post them on Facebook. I'll do my best to answer them. Try to be, somewhat respectful. I'll answer all questions as best I can. I'm a little busy, but I will get to them. And you have opinions about this issue, I'd love to hear them. And I could go on about this very issue for a very long time. There was a lot of buzz about incorporating the controls for an iPad or an iPod right in on the jacket. We actually tried it ourselves. My feeling is, why would you need a remote that you could control a device when you can do so elegantly, right through a screen, or otherwise? I mean, you don't need a remote to control a device that's right here. And most iPods have a little remote here. So you want a remote here to control a remote here, or you want a Bluetooth embedded here when you can take a piece out and take it with you? It makes no sense at all. It makes no sense.
Well, I'm out.
So, by the way, what you just saw there was the passion that I feel about my product and about my business. That could have been, I guess, in a vacuum, interpreted as aggressiveness. That was not scripted. That is how I feel when I start to talk about my business. So,
You were out from the moment you sat down, so you're no loss.
if I regret one thing, I regret saying that, and I apologize to Mark Cuban for saying that. That, you must know, was done after a series of comments that did not stop from the moment he opened his mouth. And it was clear. So I should not have said that. And I am sorry I said that. I had nothing to gain by saying that. And then as the next comment reveals, I thought I was in big trouble for having said that when they called me out on that. So I am sorry, but it is true, and I did feel attacked. And you can, just the look on his face, he couldn't believe I said it, and I shouldn't have.
What is your problem? Why would you say a comment like that to Mark? You call me insane?
No,
I knew I was in trouble here.
I think it's
So at this point, I knew I was in trouble. I got to admit that I knew things were not going my way, that I was unlikely to walk out of there with a deal. If you watch this show, you're a fan of the show. Anytime Cuban attacks, like the guy with the iron bracelet, which I do believe he was absolutely right, that was not a great idea as presented. And but there, you cannot. The other sharks, when Mark feels strongly about something, rarely do the other sharks jump on a deal. He controls typically the room. Speaking of which, my initial impression when I got out of the room and having watched, I controlled the room. At no point in time did I feel that I wasn't in control. And you think about how unusual that is. There are 5 of them. They're comfortable. They're sitting down. They're raised. They're elevated. I really felt good about having controlled, answered all the questions, and for the most part, other than that last comment, respectful.
Is something you wouldn't offer us part of the bigger picture? I'm not.
I was disappointed. I'll be honest with you that I lost Damon. I wanted Damon. I thought he would understand this, at being in the clothing industry. And in fact, I was in touch with Damon through an intermediary up until the show aired, in an effort to do a deal together. I even offered to license to FUBU at a very attractive cost, and issuing a press release together the night of the show, saying that we were now partners. I thought it would have made a great TV, taking this to the next level for technology-enabled clothing, myself and Damon. So
he was one of the reasons why you wanted to be on the show. I remember when we were talking about, does it make sense to go on the show, and just talking it through. Part of the discussion was, is Damon going to be back? Because he was really one of the main.
That's absolutely right. And let's come back to that, because, again, one of the main criticisms was that I had no intention of getting a deal. That I was on just for publicity. I could not have fought that hard as an act. I was not acting. The only acting was in the first part. I wanted to be partners with Damon. A perfect world to me was Cuban and Damon, and I thought that was possible. I really did. Damon is an expert. I have a lot of respect for what he's done building brands. I really wanted to be in business with Damon, and I still do, in fact. And you're absolutely right. We evaluated this business. We took this. Listen, when you have an opportunity to go through in front of 6.5 million people, we gamed this thing out from the very beginning. What it would involve in terms of resources internally, what the expected results were, what type of deal I would take, what I'd be willing to take. The one thing I was not willing to take and could not take was a deal for SCOTTeVEST, because I would have had to open up SCOTTeVEST to additional equity, and I was not willing to do that. So I had planned on everything, but that was not negotiable.
Whose sharks are up? And Scott has one offer on the table for Mark.
They asked a scorpion why it would kill something that's floating across a pond. Because it's nature. You're a lawyer. It's your nature.
See, I really hate being thought of as a lawyer. They kept coming back to that.
Great point about lawyers. You gotta admit that.
No.
It hasn't happened today.
It's coming, and technology changes.
They kept thinking it was just a patent. It was not a brand. That really bothered me.
You're doing a great job building this business. Now, Robert made you an offer. He said, bundle them together if you probably take 15%. I'll go in with him on that deal and go 50-50, or I'll offer you $1 million if he wants to come in with me. We'll double it. And 30%.
See, they even refer to Kevin's offer $1 million for a 30% stake in the patent. And it wasn't the patent. They were devaluing the business platform. It was much bigger than that. I envision a day where not only is technology-enabled clothing licensing to other brands, but technology-enabled clothing itself is developing a brand of children's clothing, of streetwear, that there is a massive brand you could build around. SCOTTeVEST was designed as a proof of concept. It's very niche-y. It's a travel clothing company. It's a geekwear clothing company. It does not have the mass potential, I believe, that technology-enabled clothing does. It's an awkward name for a company. Technology-enabled clothing, it's a cool name, and it has massive potential, and they would not entertain it. It was just, they just thought of me as a patent troll and buying something in a patent.
I gave you $500,000 for 15%. I don't need O'Leary on that.
Again, I know I'm in trouble because they're offering for SCOTTeVEST, and I'm really worried now that by merely them offering for SCOTTeVEST, that I'm exposing SCOTTeVEST to an interest for the producers.
Is there a premise under which you're going to entertain an offer in the real business?
Well, I couldn't answer that question. If I had merely answered that question, that I would have opened it up. And if you just, the math is insane. It's not an insignificant percentage involved. So at this point, it's all show. I knew I had no chance whatsoever of getting an investment. So at this point, I had a couple paths. I mean, I could have walked out. I could have just said, it's over. You're not going to invest. Goodbye. Or I could have tried to make the best TV I could. So if someone's going to criticize me for trying to make it into a publicity stunt, this is where it starts, and that's not what it was intended to be. So I want to be clear about that. If people feel duped in knowing that, it wasn't the initial intention. It wasn't how I started. It wasn't how I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave with an investment. Why wouldn't I? But I wanted it in tech, and I couldn't have it in SCOTTeVEST for the reasons I described. So at this moment forward, I'm weighing out. Keep in mind, what I'm doing is I am writing, directing, editing, producing my show, knowing that someone else is going to have to edit this. So in my head, on that stage, I am thinking about a lot of different things, and all the while, not having slept a while, doing something unique with hundreds of people around in the darkness, under the lights. It was intense. It wasn't easy. So at this point, everything changed. I'm thinking, okay, I'm clearly not getting an investment, but I want to be remembered. I want to walk away and people to remember me and be interested enough about me to go and look me up and look up technology-enabled clothing and be interested in licensing and know that I was a man that really stood up for his business and his brand and believed in it, and perhaps buy a jacket.
I have a call that I need to make.
It's not just a vest, by the way.
My advisory board, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, and I need to talk with Steve Wozniak.
Tell Waz I said hi, too.
I will. Would you like to say hi to him?
Sure, I sold him a ton of software. I was their education business for years.
So, stop right there. At this point, I'm smiling because I'm just like, I'm loving that exchange. And I am all showman. From this point forward, this is a performance. Not rehearsed, but a performance. There was one thing, when I did point, we'll get to this, when I did point, I had thought about that, saying, wouldn't it be cool if I could do that? But but I didn't think I could pull it off. I didn't think the circumstances would present itself that I could do that. Because you have to, if it doesn't appear authentic, and that I deserve criticism for that, because I've been called out for making it look like a publicity stunt. Perhaps if I hadn't pointed, and we'll get to that, maybe people would have thought of the whole episode differently. But then again, they used that in the teaser. They liked the drama of that. So at this point, I'm walking back, and I'm nervous.
You should be able to take nonsense like that and turn into a patent, and then fill up the legal system, and then create unlimited.
I can't hear what they're talking about here. I'm standing in this hallway here, and we're trying to get Steve Wozniak on the phone. Now, they're right behind me, and I was told when I was shown this whole experience that they could hear what I'm saying. If I was talking, if they wanted to, if they were silent, they could hear everything I'm saying. And I brought that up, and the guy said, don't worry, they're going to be doing their own thing. They're right on their Blackberries talking. They were in a heated debate behind me about me, and I would love for ABC to release the tape of that exchange. This took 15 minutes because we had to track Steve Wozniak down. He was in Jackson Hole and out of cell service. So we weren't sure if we were going to get him on the phone. And I might have had to go back there and made a fool of myself and say, I guess Steve wasn't available. But fortunately he was, because we didn't have a precise time when I was going to be there. So before I got on the phone, I yelled out to my connection with the producer, and I said, before I get back out there on the stage, I want to know, have I jeopardized, SCOTTeVEST? Have I exposed SCOTTeVEST? Because up until that point, I didn't mention the name of SCOTTeVEST, but an offer has been put on the table, not for technology-enabled clothing, but for SCOTTeVEST. I could not walk back into that room and start negotiating for SCOTTeVEST under any circumstances, unless I was willing to give a not insignificant percentage that I can't disclose of SCOTTeVEST, regardless of whether or not a deal was made. And I just was not prepared to do that. So at this point, I knew they weren't interested in tech. This was all show at this point. I wanted to talk to Woz and get a good quote. And his first quote was awesome. What he said was validating. I was scared that Woz, it was hard to understand the intricacies, that Woz might have said, that's a great deal. I think you should take it. I didn't know what he was going to say. This is unscripted at this point. So, okay, this is Scott Jordan, CEO and co-founder of SCOTTeVEST Technology-Enabled Clothing. This is part 5 of a multi-part series on explaining the backstory on what happened in Shark Tank on March 2nd. I want to apologize. It appears that the video stopped and froze frame on the entire last portion. So, I think the audio explains it better, and the video isn't that critical. So, hopefully, the video is going to work on this portion. So, here we go. I'm talking to Steve Wozniak, and
here's the deal. I got 2 offers on the table, both from Kevin and Robert. They're the same amount, $500,000 for 15%, which is what I asked for, but they're insisting that I include my other retail company.
Again, I can't even mention it.
Too much for this kind of offer. I don't think this offer is good enough for giving up what you got going already.
What he's doing right now is he's trying to figure out
He's wrong.
Is he serious about selling the real business or not? If I believe he will, maybe I'll make him a real offer.
Now, I didn't know he said that, number one. I would be actually quite interested in possibly going back in the Shark Tank for next season for SCOTTeVEST, but I would have to have a discussion about the percentage given the value of SCOTTeVEST. I think it would make great TV to have me back in the tank, offer SCOTTeVEST in a serious manner. I thought that was kind of a telling comment. I mean, personally, I want to hire people that are smarter than I am. I don't want to set the bar. I want smarter people than me working for me. But I think that at this point, they felt, and they probably, and part rightfully so, that there was showmanship involved. And I told you specifically when it turned into a performance. When I realized that they were only after SCOTTeVEST and not tech, and that wasn't until very late in the negotiations when that really, really happened, even though it was always at issue. So, I think that he really felt like I wasted his time, but I didn't. I was there to make a deal, and to make a deal specifically with him. So then I went over to Kevin, and I shook Kevin's hands, and Kevin, even at that moment, wanted to still make a deal. He couldn't believe it. He said, usually we counter. There's some sort of negotiation. Why no counter? He was truly upset about it. And then I went over to Barb, and then I hugged her, shook her hand, and everything was very cordial. It was like a kumbaya moment. We all just had this shared experience. And then this is what got me. I went over to Robert, and I put out my hand, and I went to shake his hand. He's the 5th in line. And he turns to me and says, I'm not going to shake your hand. He says, you pointed at me like I was 12 years old. That's ridiculous. And he just went off on me. And with that, I said to him, unequivocally, I looked him in the eye. I was pissed. I said, I've been in business for 20 years. And never before in 20 years, regardless of how heated any negotiations got, has anyone refused to shake my hand. And with that, I turned my back and I said, I'm out of here. I literally did. It was ridiculous. He couldn't shake my hand. I mean, what's that about? And in response, as I'm walking away, I'm gone, he says what he says right here with my back to him.
You another opportunity.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, you can imagine how awkward it was when I'm walking out and he's yelling at me, saying, you know, that's just whatever he said. It was kind of pathetic, Robert.
You're out.
It really was.
Wow.
You had $1 million,
Your wife represented me in suing you
So-
for that time.
I mean, I'd like to see the tape on that. Me walking away and Robert like whining, you know,
Seriously.
like
What the hell? You point at me and you tell me I'm out?
that's when he wouldn't shake my hand. I mean,
Show them more respect.
yeah, that's when I'm walking. He's
It's painful. And my mother always said, the fish stays.
I didn't hear any of this
Why are we still
happening.
talking about it?
I went in looking for a deal. I truly did. But unfortunately, the valuation that they put on my other company to combine was just insulting. I had no other choice. I had to walk.
So there's one thing I want you to see here that is really important as well. And at this point, by the way, they pulled me off after the airing, and I into a separate space for a post interview like that. And they said they're still talking about you. You made quite an impression. I mean, they were still talking about me. Hold on.
I don't need you.
Okay.
An all-new, jaw-dropping.
Hold on one sec.
You're out. I don't need you.
Hold on.
You're being un-American.
I'm telling you, Mark. I mean,
No.
Hold on.
You're so full of crap.
you're out. I don't need you.
Oh, right there. I mean, they're right here. Okay, right here. Sony Pictures Television, a designee of Mark Burnett and ABC, may receive equity in or a share of revenues generated in any businesses in this program. Very small. I think it would make the show a lot more interesting if people knew that the entrepreneur, everyone's saying, I got free publicity. I did not get free publicity. I gave up a portion of my business or revenue stream to be on that program. And if I was going to do that as a businessman, I clearly wanted to make the most out of it. I did go in there expecting a deal and fighting for a deal. But I also went in there for the publicity. And I would caution anyone else that wants to go on Shark Tank that if you want to raise money, there are other ways to do it, more likely ways to do it. If you're going on Shark Tank, one of the things you need to consider is the impact of over 6 million people watching you and your performance and the impression you make. Now, if I had to do it all over again, would I have done it differently? Clearly. I've pointed out several places that I would. Am I proud of my performance? Do I think I represented myself well and my company well and my employees? Well, absolutely, I am. Would I do it again? You know, yeah, I absolutely would do it again. It was a great experience. It was exhausting. I've never done something that had that much time involved. So I'm going to wrap up now. There's a lot more that I'm sure I didn't address. I'm sure this raises more questions than it answers, but I hope you found this interesting. And a couple things. I'm serious about debating Mark Cuban. I would welcome the experience to get on a stage with him. Preferably on Stephen Colbert's show, where we sat across the table and talked about this exchange, patents, Shark Tank. What patents have done for the American business. How they've grown America, and I would ask people to ask ABC to release an unedited version or a barely edited hour-long version to see what happened in the tank. I think it's more interesting, and I would ask you to go on Twitter, go on Facebook, get involved in the conversation. If you have something to say to me, Scott at ScottTEVEST.com. I will do my best to answer it. I want to thank everyone for watching. If you've lasted this long, I hope it was interesting. And that's all I really have to say.